True story, my ungrateful son said I'd get nothing from my inheritance. Have you ever felt the suffocating weight of expectation, not from strangers, but from the very people you've nurtured and loved? Have you ever questioned if your generosity, your quiet sacrifices, were not seen as gifts, but as entitlements, as an endless tap that could be turned on at will? Have you ever, despite pouring your heart and soul, along with your financial resources, into your children's lives, found yourself viewed as little more than a necessary resource, a walking ATM rather than a cherished mother? I have. And believe me, that feeling, that deep, soul-crushing betrayal, taught me the biggest, most painful, and ultimately, most liberating lesson of my entire life. It's a story I never thought I'd tell, one I've kept locked away in my heart for far too long, tucked beneath layers of polite smiles and forced patience, but I feel it's time. Perhaps, by sharing my truth, someone else out there might find the courage they need. So, settle in, dear friend, because what I'm about to tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. It's the story of how my own sons, Kaelin and Torvin, along with their wives, tried to erase me, and how I, an old woman of 78, found my strength again. It was a Tuesday, I remember it vividly. The air was crisp, the autumn leaves a brilliant blaze of red and gold outside my living room window, but inside, the atmosphere was colder than a winter's night. My two sons, Kaelin and Torvin, sat across from me on my antique velvet sofa, their wives, Serafina and Bronwyn, perched beside them like birds of prey, their designer handbags clutched in their laps. They had called this family meeting, you see, ostensibly to discuss future financial planning for the Sterling family. Oh, how naive I was. How could I have ever believed them, after all these years of veiled requests and calculated visits? A part of me, the eternal maternal optimist, truly wanted to believe this was a genuine outreach, a moment for us to connect as a family, finally, after so much emotional distance. I even had my housekeeper prepare their favorite blend of herbal tea, hoping to soften the edges of what I vaguely suspected might be another financial plea. They arrived together, pulling up in their gleaming, obscenely expensive cars, an unusual show of solidarity that should have been my first warning. Kaelin, my eldest, emerged from his sleek black sedan, always the charmer when he wanted something, his tailored suit impeccable, his smile a little too wide, a little too saccharine. He strode in, his gaze quickly scanning my familiar living room, perhaps assessing its continued value. "Mother," he started, his voice dripping with faux concern, his arm briefly touching my shoulder, a gesture so rare it felt almost foreign, "we've been thinking about your future. And, of course, the grandchildren's future. It's imperative we secure it, don't you agree?" His wife, Serafina, glided in behind him, a vision in an impossibly expensive silk dress, her eyes, usually darting around for something to critique or desire, were now fixed on her phone. She viewed me, I knew, as little more than an ATM, a wellspring of funds. I could feel her impatient energy from across the room, a subtle tap of her foot, a bored sigh. Torvin, my younger son, entered next, a man whose ambition had always overshadowed his empathy, his frame radiating a controlled tension. He carried a thick, leather-bound folder under his arm, his gaze flicking between it and me, his jawline set. He nodded gravely to my question, his eyes already betraying the serious, business-like nature of their visit. Bronwyn, Torvin's wife, followed, her every breath seemingly calculated to project an image of effortless wealth. She barely acknowledged me beyond a perfunctory nod, her gaze already settling on the antique vase on my mantelpiece, no doubt mentally appraising its worth. They looked every bit the picture of success that my late husband's legacy had afforded them, a legacy I had quietly, diligently, maintained for decades. My heart, despite years of their emotional distance and a growing unease, still longed for connection. I thought, perhaps, this was finally it. A genuine concern. "Yes, dear boys, of course," I replied, my voice softer than I intended, a tremor of hope fluttering within me. "What exactly did you have in mind?" I gestured towards the tea, but they ignored it, their focus unwavering, their expressions hardening. That's when Torvin, without a shred of warmth or respect, pushed the folder across the antique mahogany table, the very table my husband and I had picked out together decades ago, a cherished piece that had witnessed countless family dinners and children's birthday parties. It was a legally drafted document, bound and official, sealed with embossed paper. "Mother," he said, his tone clipped, professional, completely devoid of any familial affection, as if he were addressing a subordinate in a business meeting, "we've had our lawyers draw up a new trust. It's a family trust, you see, to streamline the inheritance process. We believe, for the sake of efficiency and to ensure the proper future for the grandchildren, it would be best if you were to transfer your remaining liquid assets into this new trust. Kaylin and I would, of course, be the primary trustees." His words, delivered with such cold precision, hung in the air like icicles. My blood ran cold. My remaining liquid assets?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, the hope I had clung to dissolving like mist. I looked from one face to another, searching for a flicker of shame, a hint of discomfort, a sign that they understood the monstrous nature of their request. There was none. Only cold, calculating determination. Kaylin avoided my gaze, adjusting his tie. Torvin stared directly at me, his eyes like stone. Kaylin leaned forward, his voice a smooth, practiced drone, a tone he reserved for difficult clients or when trying to extract a large sum of money. "It's for the best, Mother. You see, with your existing trust, the one that, currently supports our businesses and homes, that would remain. We're not suggesting you lose access to that. But your personal control over your remaining wealth, well, that would cease. This new trust ensures everything is managed centrally, by us. It simplifies everything. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. Think of it as liberating you from the burden of financial decisions in your golden years." He even managed a thin, condescending smile. "Meaning," Serafina interjected, finally looking up from her phone, her tone sharper than a freshly honed knife, a hint of triumph in her voice, "you'd get nothing from your own inheritance. Because it would all be ours to manage." Her smile widened, a cruel, predatory gleam in her eyes. Bronwyn, whose silence until now had been unnerving, nodded in agreement, a smug expression settling on her face, as if this were the most logical and obvious course of action. I could almost hear the collective sigh of relief from them, already envisioning their expanded luxury. The words hung in the air, a grotesque echo of their true intentions. "You'd get nothing." They said it so casually, as if discussing the weather, as if it were a minor administrative detail. My heart, which had just moments before held a fragile hope for connection, shattered into a million pieces, each shard a memory of sacrifice and quiet love. Nothing. From the woman who had quietly, for decades, been the silent foundation of their luxurious lives. Nothing from the wealth I had inherited, the wealth my dear husband had meticulously built, not just for my comfort, but for the secure future of all of us. This wasn't about efficiency, it was about absolute control, about stripping me of my last shred of autonomy. I looked at my sons, the boys I had nurtured, loved, supported without question for their entire lives. The boys who, as children, had climbed into my lap for comfort, who had presented me with clumsy handmade cards on Mother's Day, whose every scraped knee and broken heart I had tried to mend. And in their eyes, I saw only avarice, a cold, calculating greed. No love. No respect. Just a blatant, audacious attempt to seize what they believed was rightfully theirs, even before I was gone. It was the final, unforgivable insult. This brazen attempt to strip me of my autonomy, to essentially declare me financially incompetent and irrelevant, was the ultimate betrayal. The air grew thick with their unspoken arrogance. They expected me to sign. They truly believed I would just acquiesce, like a compliant old woman. I took a deep, shaky breath, the pain a physical ache in my chest. My hands, which had been trembling slightly, balled into fists in my lap, then slowly, deliberately, stilled. A strange clarity washed over me, like a sudden burst of sunlight after a long, oppressive storm. The pain was immense, yes, but beneath it, a tiny ember of defiance began to glow, then spread, burning away the despair. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, considering the tempest raging inside me. "So, you've come here to tell me that everything I have left, everything I control, should be handed over to you? And that I, Alara Sterling, would have no say in it? Torvin's jaw tightened. It's about control, Mother. Centralized control. For the family's future. For the grandchildren. He repeated the mantra, as if it would make their scheme more palatable. No, I said, looking each of them directly in the eye, my voice gaining strength with every word, my gaze unwavering. It's about your control. Over me. And the answer is no. I will not sign this document. Not now, not ever. The air in the room seemed to crackle with unspoken shock. Their smug expressions melted away, replaced by disbelief, then a flicker of anger, quickly followed by outright fury. Bronwyn's mouth dropped open. Serafina stopped fiddling with her phone, her eyes wide. But I didn't care. The line had been crossed. My quiet, enduring patience had finally run out. This was not the mother they knew, this was Alara Sterling, and she was not to be trifled with. So how did we get here, you ask? How did a mother, who loved her sons so fiercely, who believed in their potential, find herself in a position where they thought it perfectly acceptable to demand her last shred of independence? Well, it's a long story, one woven with threads of quiet sacrifice, unfulfilled hopes, and a gradual, insidious erosion of respect. My husband, Arthur, bless his soul, was a brilliant industrialist, a man of integrity and vision. He built an empire from nothing, starting with a small manufacturing plant and growing it into a global enterprise. When he passed away too young, he left me with immense wealth, not just for my comfort, but with the clear instruction that it was to be used wisely, to secure our family's future, and to continue the philanthropic work we had both cherished. He instilled in me the value of honest work, of generosity, but also of self-reliance, of standing on one's own 2 feet. Lessons, I now see, that my sons never truly absorbed. They saw the fortune, not the philosophy behind it. From the moment they became adults, I wanted nothing more than to see Kaylin and Torvin thrive. I wanted them to pursue their passions, to build their own lives, knowing they always had a safety net, a gentle cushion if they stumbled. But somewhere along the way, that safety net became a trampoline for their wildest whims, then a luxurious hammock for their indolence, and eventually, a gilded cage for me, the one providing it all. Let's start with Kaylin, my eldest. He always had grand ideas, a restless, creative spirit, but very little follow-through, and even less business acumen. His entrepreneurial spirit, as he liked to call it, was really a string of spectacularly failing ventures, each one draining my resources and my dwindling hope. There was the organic juice bar, Kaylin's Cleanse, that lasted a mere 6 months before the equipment was repossessed and the rent went unpaid. Then came the artisanal candle company, Sterling Scents, which managed to melt more money than wax, leaving me to cover the substantial debts. And, of course, the tech startup, Innovate Now, which never launched beyond a fancy website and a few slick marketing materials, costing me nearly $1 million in angel investment that evaporated into thin air. Each time, he'd come to me, full of remorse and grand promises of the next big thing, asking for just one more investment, Mother. This one is different, I promise. And each time I'd open my purse. I paid for the leases, the equipment, the employees' salaries, even when I knew, deep down, it was a losing battle. Why? Because he was my son. I wanted him to succeed. I believed in him even when he gave me little reason to, clinging to the boy I remembered, the one who drew me crayon pictures and swore he'd be an inventor. His wife, Serafina, was no help, in fact, she was an accelerant to his wasteful habits. She lived for designer labels, exclusive country club memberships, and lavish European vacations, always with the expectation that I would foot the bill. She saw my wealth not as a means to build, but to consume, to flaunt. She'd call me, not to ask how I was, or to invite me for a genuine visit, but to subtly hint that their summer villa in Tuscany needed a new roof, or that the children's private school tuition at the prestigious Crestwood Academy had just gone up, or that her annual charity gala needed just a little more to reach its fundraising goal. And again, I'd pay. I funded their sprawling home in the exclusive gated community, their luxury cars, a new one every 2 years, their children's elite education, their seemingly endless array of social engagements. Because, again, they were my grandchildren. I wanted them to have every advantage. But I also longed for a simple thank you, a genuine conversation, a visit that didn't involve a veiled request for funds. It rarely came. Their gratitude, if it existed at all, was a fleeting whisper, quickly overshadowed by the next demand. I recall one Christmas when I gave Kaylin a beautifully hand-knitted scarf, made with my own hands, and Serafina actually scoffed, "Oh, Mother, Kaylin only wears cashmere now." But it's the thought that counts, I suppose. The sting of that dismissive remark stayed with me for weeks. Then there's Torvin, my younger son. He presented a more outwardly successful facade. A high-flying real estate developer, he was always boasting about his latest multi-million-dollar project, his name splashed in local business journals. What the world didn't see, what they didn't want the world to see, was that his initial capital, the very seed money for his empire, came from me, a cool $10 million to kickstart his first major development. And his successes were often propped up by my continuous bailouts when his grand schemes inevitably ran into financial difficulties. He'd frame it as strategic investments on my part, but they were rescue missions, pure and simple. I remember one time, he called me in a panic, on the brink of losing a massive development because of a cash flow crisis, a sudden shortfall due to an unexpected permit delay. I wired him $5 million that day, no questions asked, just because he was my son and he sounded desperate. Do you know what I got in return? A curt email from his assistant confirming receipt. No personal call. No visit. Just an expectation that I would always be there, silent and ready with my checkbook, like a hidden safety valve for his overextended ambitions. His wife, Bronwyn, was even more dismissive than Serafina. She was fiercely status-driven, obsessed with maintaining a public image of effortless wealth and social superiority. She hosted elaborate charity galas, ensuring her name was on every major philanthropic committee, all funded by me, of course, the quiet, anonymous donor in the background. She never missed an opportunity to subtly remind me of my age, my perceived lack of understanding of the modern world, or how much their lifestyle cost, as if I were somehow inconveniencing them by merely existing and holding on to my own money. I'd visit their sprawling mansion, which I had helped finance down to the very landscaping, and she'd barely glance up from her tablet, dismissing my presence with a wave of her hand, or a curt, "Oh, Mother, you're here." My advice, my opinions, my feelings, they were all utterly irrelevant to her, an antiquated burden. I remember trying to offer some wisdom about investing in stable, long-term assets, something Arthur had taught me, and she simply chuckled, saying, "Oh, Alara, darling, that's simply not how things are done these days. Leave the big decisions to the men." For years, I quietly funded their businesses, their homes, their lavish lifestyles, and my grandchildren's elite education. I attended their children's school plays, their graduation ceremonies, their elaborate birthday parties, often as the only one who seemed genuinely invested, while Kaylin and Torvin were preoccupied with their phones or their next deal. I hosted family dinners that were more like business meetings for them, where they'd discuss their latest financial woes or grand plans, expecting me to simply listen and, of course, provide. I remember one Christmas Eve, I had cooked for days, preparing a feast, and both sons spent the entire evening on their phones, taking urgent calls, completely oblivious to my efforts, or the children trying to get their attention. It was a constant, low-level hum of neglect and expectation. I longed for their genuine affection and respect. I wanted them to see me, Alara, their mother, not just as a financial resource, but as a person, a woman who had lived a full life, who had wisdom to share, and who deserved love and consideration. But all I received were cold demands, dismissive attitudes, and a growing sense of entitlement that curdled my spirit. They had become accustomed to the wellspring of my inheritance, drawing from it without thought, without gratitude, without ever considering that one day, it might run dry, or that I might simply stop giving. It was a silent agreement, an unspoken expectation, that my purpose was to fund their lives, indefinitely, until my last breath. And now, they wanted to ensure that even after my last breath, my control would cease. It truly broke my heart, you know? To realize that the people you loved most saw you as a means to an end, a convenient accessory to their opulent lives. The irony was not lost on me. I had spent years building their lives, and in doing so, had slowly dismantled my own sense of self-worth. What would you have done? How much more could you take? I lay awake that night after the family meeting, the phrase "you'd get nothing" echoing in the stillness of my bedroom, a chilling mantra of their contempt. The pain was unbearable, a sharp, piercing agony that settled deep in my chest, making it difficult to breathe. It wasn't just the words, it was the casual cruelty, the utter lack of empathy, the brazen entitlement that cut me to the core. For years, I had held on to a thread of hope, a desperate wish that one day, my sons would see me, truly see me, and appreciate what I had done for them. That they would offer genuine affection, not just when they needed something. That hope died that afternoon. It was extinguished by their cold, calculating demand, by the realization that their love, if it ever existed, was contingent on my endless supply of funds. I felt like a foolish old woman, used and discarded, left to wither in a corner. I looked at the ceiling, tears silently tracing paths down my temples into my hair, wetting my pillow. The moon cast long, ghostly shadows across the room, mimicking the emptiness I felt inside. I had built my life around them, around their well-being, their success, their comfort. My entire identity, in many ways, had become the mother who provides, the silent benefactor. But at what cost? My dignity? My peace? My very autonomy? I replayed every dismissive glance, every curt email, every thinly veiled demand for money. The years of quiet resentment bubbled to the surface, a bitter taste in my mouth. Then, slowly, through the haze of tears and despair, a different feeling began to emerge. A flicker of anger, hot and righteous, like a spark catching in dry tinder. Anger at them, yes, for their audacious greed and callous disregard. But also, and more powerfully, anger at myself. Anger that I had allowed this for so long, that I had permitted them to treat me this way, that I had confused financial provision with genuine love. It was a harsh realization, but a necessary one. I finally saw them for what they were, ungrateful, self-serving, and utterly devoid of filial piety. And I realized, with a clarity that stung like a slap, that I had enabled it. Every handout, every bailout, every quiet acceptance of their dismissive behavior had chipped away at my own self-worth, and at their respect for me. I had inadvertently taught them that my love was synonymous with my money. The sun began to peek through the curtains, casting long, pale shadows across the room. The first rays of dawn, usually a gentle comfort, now felt like a spotlight, illuminating the path I needed to take. It was then, in that quiet dawn, that I made my decision. It wasn't born of malice, believe me. It was born of a profound sense of self-preservation, of a desperate need to reclaim my dignity, and to finally, teach them a lesson that money could never buy. They wanted control? They wanted to reduce me to nothing? Fine. But they wouldn't get a penny more from my remaining wealth, and they would no longer be dependent on what they already had. The wellspring was about to run dry for them, permanently. I rose from my bed, a newfound resolve hardening my spirit, settling deep within my bones. My hands, which had trembled with sorrow hours before, were now steady, firm. I went to my study, a room I hadn't truly felt was mine in years, surrounded by their invoices and financial reports, the ghosts of their endless demands. I picked up the phone, my fingers dialing a number I knew by heart. My long-serving attorney, Mr. Davies, answered on the second ring. He sounded surprised. I usually called his office line during business hours, not at the crack of dawn. "Elara? Is everything all right?" he asked, a touch of concern in his voice, his calm demeanor usually unflappable. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice clear and firm, the steel in it unmistakable, "I need you to come to my home this morning. As soon as possible. And please, have Ms. Chen, my financial advisor, join us. This is urgent." He must have heard the uncharacteristic steel in my voice, the urgency that transcended mere financial matters, because he didn't press. Of course, Elara. We'll be there within the hour. His voice was calm, professional, but I knew he was already anticipating something significant. When they arrived, their faces etched with polite curiosity, quickly turning to concern as they took in my determined expression. I wasted no time. I sat them down in my living room, the very place where my sons had delivered their audacious demand just hours earlier. I didn't mince words. I told them everything, every humiliating detail of the family meeting, the document, the phrase "you'd get nothing." Mr. Davies listened, his usually stoic face showing a flicker of disbelief, his pen poised over his notepad, his eyes occasionally darting to mine, as if searching for a sign of wavering. Ms. Chen, a shrewd woman who had managed my portfolio for years, looked grim, her lips pressed into a thin line. She had seen the numbers, the endless transfers, and I knew she had her suspicions about my son's true intentions, though she had always remained discreet. "So, what is your instruction, Elara?" Mr. Davies asked, his pen finally beginning to move, sensing the gravity of the moment. I looked out the window, at the vibrant autumn leaves, a stark contrast to the coldness I had endured. "I want you to immediately dissolve all existing trusts that benefit my sons, Kalen and Torvin, and their families," I stated, my voice unwavering, each word a hammer blow of resolve. "Every single one. The ones funding Kalen's businesses, Torvin's projects, their mortgages, their car payments, the grandchildren's allowances, their university funds, everything. Freeze all accounts associated with these trusts. Effective immediately. I want the taps turned off." Mr. Davies's pen paused mid-stroke, then continued with renewed vigor. Ms. Chen's eyes widened slightly, her initial grimness deepening into a look of quiet admiration. "Elara, are you certain? This is a very significant step. It would have immediate and profound consequences for their financial stability. Everything they rely on, beyond their current income, would cease." "I am perfectly certain, Mr. Davies," I replied, meeting his gaze, my own eyes holding no doubt. "They have made their choice. Now I am making mine. They wanted to control my wealth. They can control their own lives now. Without my assistance." Then I continued, outlining the second, equally crucial, part of my plan. "Furthermore, I want you to redirect the entirety of my remaining liquid wealth, everything that is not already tied up in my personal living expenses, to a newly established charitable foundation. It will be named the Sterling Legacy Foundation, in honor of my late husband's vision. It will be under my sole control while I am alive, and its mandate will be to support causes that my late husband and I deeply believed in: education for underprivileged youth, pioneering medical research, and environmental conservation." I paused, then added a crucial clause, watching their reactions. "This foundation will only activate its full operations, including the disbursement of its principal, upon my passing. Until then, it will be a legal entity, fully funded, its funds secure, but not yet active in its mission. And under no circumstances are my sons or their families to have any involvement with it, now or in the future. Not a single penny from this foundation is to ever reach them." Mr. Davies scribbled furiously, a slight smile playing on his lips, then looked up, a hint of admiration, perhaps even awe, in his eyes. "This is comprehensive, Elara. And legally sound. It will take some time to execute all the paperwork for the foundation, but the freezing of accounts can be done within hours, with immediate effect." "Do it," I commanded, my voice firm. "Today. Before the sun sets. I want them to wake up to a new reality tomorrow." Ms. Chen, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. "And your personal accounts, Elara? Your living expenses?" "Those remain untouched, of course," I confirmed. "I have more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days. My life will not change. Theirs, however, will. Dramatically. They will learn what it means to stand on their own 2 feet, something I sadly failed to teach them." A strange calm settled over me as they began to make calls, setting the intricate machinery of legal and financial change into motion. It wasn't revenge, not truly, though a part of me felt a grim satisfaction. It was a reclaiming. A drawing of a final, unbreachable boundary. I had spent years pouring myself into a bottomless pit of ingratitude. Now, it was time to build something else, something truly meaningful, for a future that extended beyond my own bloodline, for people who would actually benefit from it. The decision was made. The action had begun. And I knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within my soul, that there was no turning back. Of course, my decision was going to have consequences, wasn't it? You don't just pull the rug out from under lives built on borrowed money, on constant infusions of wealth, without a spectacular crash. The first sign that my actions had taken effect came the very next morning, not with a phone call, but with a series of increasingly frantic text messages, their tones escalating from confusion to panic to outright fury. "Kaylin, Mother, my business account is frozen. What is going on? This is insane. Torvin, my latest development loan payment bounced. Is this some kind of mistake? My reputation is on the line. Serafina, my card was declined at the boutique. The deposit for the Hamptons rental bounced. This is unacceptable, Alara. What have you done? Bronwyn, my housekeeper just called, the mortgage payment didn't go through. The bank is calling. Do you know what this means? Our reputation. Our credit. This is sabotage." I read each message, sipping my Earl Grey tea in my sunroom, the morning light streaming in. My heart still ached from the betrayal, a faint phantom pain, but now it was armored with an unshakable resolve. I didn't reply. I simply watched, waited, knowing the storm was coming. It wasn't long before they arrived. I was still having my morning tea, sitting in my sunroom, enjoying the quiet peace that had finally settled over me, a peace I hadn't known in decades. There was a frantic pounding on my front door. Not a polite ring, but a desperate, aggressive drumming, as if they expected the door to give way under their collective fury. I calmly finished my tea, placed the cup on its saucer, its porcelain clinking softly, and slowly, deliberately, made my way to the door. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. When I opened it, there they stood, a whirlwind of panic and fury, their usual polished exteriors replaced by raw, unvarnished emotion. Kaylin and Torvin, their faces flushed, their usual composure shattered, their expensive clothes rumpled. Serafina, her designer scarf askew, her eyes wide with indignation, her mouth already open to unleash a torrent of complaints. And Bronwyn, her perfect coiffure slightly ruffled, her usual sneer replaced by a gaping disbelief, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. "Mother! What is the meaning of this?" Kaylin practically roared, striding into my foyer without an invitation, his voice echoing in the grand space. "My accounts are frozen. My business is in jeopardy. My partners are calling me. What have you done? My mortgage payment bounced, Alara." Bronwyn shrieked, her voice high-pitched with hysteria, completely abandoning any pretense of decorum. "Do you know what this means? Our reputation. Our credit. We could lose everything." Torvin, usually the calmest and most calculating of the lot, was trembling with rage, his face a mottled red. "Mother, you cannot do this. This is completely unacceptable. This affects everything. The children's schools, our investments, my entire portfolio. This is financial ruin." Serafina, meanwhile, was already trying to call someone on her phone, muttering about this absolute disaster and my lawyers. She looked like a spoiled child who had just had her favorite toy snatched away. I simply stood there, watching them, absorbing their frantic energy, their chaotic display of entitlement. It was a spectacle, truly. The entitled elite, suddenly faced with the consequences of their own expectations, their carefully constructed lives crumbling around them. My composure, however, was unwavering, a solid rock amidst their stormy emotions. I closed the front door behind them, slowly, deliberately, the click of the lock echoing with finality. "Please," I said, my voice calm, almost serene, cutting through their cacophony like a finely tuned blade. "Lower your voices. This is my home, not a marketplace, nor a battleground for your tantrums." They paused, momentarily stunned by my quiet defiance, by the unexpected firmness in my tone. They had never seen me like this. Now, I continued, gesturing towards the living room, sit down. All of you. We need to talk. And I will do the talking. Reluctantly, their fury temporarily subdued by my unexpected authority, they sank onto the sofas, though their eyes still blazed with accusation, their bodies tense. You want to know what happened? I began, my gaze sweeping over each of their faces, holding their eyes, one by one. What happened is that yesterday, you came into my home and presented me with a legal document demanding I sign over my remaining wealth to you, effectively leaving me with nothing. You treated me not as your mother, but as a senile old woman to be fleeced. You openly disrespected me, implied I was incapable of managing my own affairs, and demonstrated, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your only interest in me was my money. My life, my dignity, my autonomy, none of it mattered to you. Kalen tried to interrupt, his voice strained. Mother, that's not fair. It was for the family's future. For the grandchildren. Don't you dare, I cut him off, my voice still quiet, but with an underlying steel that silenced him instantly. Don't you dare stand there and lie to me again. For decades, I have poured everything I had into your lives. Do you know how much money I've given Kalen to prop up his endless string of failed ventures, Serafina, so you could maintain your lavish socialite lifestyle, your endless shopping sprees and exclusive holidays? Do you remember, Torvin, how many times I bailed out your high-flying real estate deals, Bronwyn, so you could keep up your illusion of effortless wealth, your name on every gala invitation, your mansion perfectly curated? Their faces, which moments ago were livid with anger, now shifted to a mixture of shock, then dawning horror, then a sickening realization. They had never heard me speak like this. Never. I had always been the quiet, accommodating mother. I paid your mortgages, I continued, listing their dependencies like a slow, deliberate indictment, each item a fresh wound to their pride. I bought your cars. I paid for your children's elite education, their allowances, their extravagant holidays, their trust funds. I was always there. Always. And for what? For cold demands? For dismissive attitudes? For a family meeting where you tried to steal my autonomy, to tell me I would get nothing from my own inheritance? You treated me as an endless resource, a silent partner in your lavish charade, and I have finally had enough. Serafina whimpered, clutching her handbag tighter. Bronwyn looked away, her face pale, the mask of composure crumbling. Torvin clenched his fists, his knuckles white, but he didn't speak, his eyes fixed on me, wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Kalen swallowed hard, his bravado utterly gone. Well, I said, leaning forward slightly, my voice dropping to a near whisper, making them strain to hear, I've made my decision. As of yesterday, all trusts benefiting you and your families have been dissolved. All accounts funding your lifestyles have been frozen. Every penny I had left, every single liquid asset that wasn't already allocated for my personal living expenses, has been redirected to a charitable foundation under my sole control. It will activate upon my passing, and it will benefit causes that truly matter, causes my husband and I believed in, not the insatiable desires of ungrateful children. A collective gasp escaped them, raw and visceral. Their eyes were wide, panicked, filled with the stark terror of impending financial ruin. You can't. Kalen stammered, finally finding his voice, though it was weak, almost a plea. This is illegal. We'll sue you. You're disinheriting us. You're welcome to try, dear boy, I replied, a ghost of a smile touching my lips, a touch of genuine amusement in my eyes. My attorney, Mr. Davies, is one of the most respected in the country. Everything has been done legally, meticulously, and entirely within my rights as the sole beneficiary and controller of my assets. You wanted to streamline the inheritance process? Congratulations. You've streamlined it straight out of your lives. There is nothing left for you to inherit from me. But, the grandchildren. Torvin cried, grasping at straws, suddenly remembering the existence of his children. What about their future? you're ruining their lives. They depend on those funds. Oh, now it's about the grandchildren? I countered, my voice hardening, losing its hint of amusement. Funny, that wasn't your primary concern when you were demanding my money and telling me I would get nothing. Their future, Torvin, will now be in your hands. You too, and your wives, will finally have the opportunity to stand on your own 2 feet, to work, to provide for your children without my endless stream of funds. Isn't that what you always claimed you were doing anyway? Being successful entrepreneurs and developers, contributing to society? They sat there, stunned into silence, their faces a canvas of shock, disbelief, and dawning despair. The full weight of their financial reality was crashing down on them, the grand edifice of their borrowed lives suddenly collapsing. Their ATM was empty. Their safety net was gone. And the woman they had taken for granted, the woman they had tried to erase, was sitting before them, calm, resolute, and utterly unyielding. There was nothing left to say, no argument they could make. I have nothing more to say to you, I concluded, rising slowly from my seat, a gesture of finality. You have made your beds. Now you must lie in them. Please, leave my home. Do not return until you can look me in the eye as your mother, not your bank, and truly mean it. They stumbled out, a broken, defeated quartet, their grand plans for my wealth crumbled into dust. The front door closed behind them, the click of the lock a definitive end to that chapter. I stood there, for a long moment, breathing in the quiet peace of my home, finally, truly, free. The confrontation had been difficult, painful even, but it was necessary. And for the first time in years, I felt a lightness in my spirit, a profound sense of liberation. The gilded cage had been unlocked, and I was the one holding the key. So, what happened next? The silence that followed their departure was deafening at first, a stark contrast to the years of constant noise, the phone calls, the demands, the subtle pressures. But it quickly became the most beautiful sound I had heard in years. No more incessant calls for money. No more veiled demands. No more patronizing advice, no more thinly disguised critiques of my lifestyle or my choices. Just peace. A deep, abiding calm settled over my home, and within my very soul. Their lives, as you can imagine, underwent a rather dramatic transformation. Kalen's aspiring entrepreneurial ventures, without my constant infusions of cash and a convenient safety net, collapsed spectacularly. His latest startup, a convoluted app for dog walkers called Paws and Paths, imploded within weeks, leaving him with mounting debt and a frustrated investor group. Serafina, suddenly cut off from her endless supply of funds, found her lavish lifestyle unsustainable. I heard whispers from mutual acquaintances, she had to sell off many of her designer possessions, her bespoke jewelry, her luxury car. Her social standing plummeted faster than a stone in a well. She had to cancel her country club membership, her annual charitable galas became a distant memory, and she even started working part-time at a high-end boutique in town, something she would have scoffed at before, considering it beneath her. Imagine that. The woman who once spent more on a single handbag than many people earned in a month, now folding cashmere sweaters for commission. Torvin, the high-flying real estate developer, found his project stalling without my initial investments and continuous bailouts. Banks, seeing his previous reliance on my funds and his overextended portfolio, were suddenly much less eager to lend. He had to liquidate some properties at a loss, taking significant hits to his supposed empire, and his carefully constructed image of effortless wealth crumbled before his very eyes. Bronwyn, obsessed with status and public perception, found herself in a truly humiliating position. Their sprawling mansion, the one I had helped finance, was eventually put on the market, and they had to downsize significantly, moving into a much more modest home in a less prestigious neighborhood. She was no longer invited to the exclusive social circles she once commanded, her name conspicuously absent from the society pages, and the public image she had so fiercely cultivated was shattered. I even heard she took up knitting to cope with the stress, which, honestly, almost made me laugh out loud, given her previous disdain for anything not bought at an exclusive gallery. My grandchildren, bless their innocent hearts, were deeply affected. Their elite school tuitions at Crestwood Academy became unmanageable, and they had to transfer to public schools. While it broke my heart for them, knowing they were caught in the crossfire of their parents' greed, I also knew that this was the harsh reality their parents had created. Perhaps, just perhaps, this drastic shift would teach them the value of hard work, of self-reliance, of genuine relationships, lessons their parents never learned, or perhaps chose to ignore. My own life, though? It became gloriously, wonderfully free. The weight of their expectations, the constant drain on my emotional and financial resources, was lifted. I no longer felt like a prisoner in my own home, waiting for the next demand, the next subtle hint, the next crisis I would have to resolve. I slept soundly for the first time in years. I started doing things I had put off for years, things that brought me genuine joy. I dusted off my old paintbrushes and began painting again, something I had loved in my youth before life, and my son's needs, consumed all my time and energy. My canvases are now vibrant with color, reflecting the joy and newfound freedom I feel, a stark contrast to the muted landscapes I used to paint. I joined a local book club, something Serafina always said was for the intellectually dull. I reconnected with old friends, wonderful women whose friendships I had neglected because I was always too preoccupied with my son's crises and demands. We travel now, taking quiet trips to charming bed and breakfasts in the countryside, exploring antique shops, visiting art galleries, and simply enjoying each other's company, sharing stories and laughter. No more frantic calls, no more cancelled plans because one of them had a financial emergency. My days are filled with my own choices, my own desires, not dictated by their needs. I also dedicated more time to the nascent charitable foundation. While it wouldn't fully activate until my passing, I began researching organizations, meeting with passionate individuals, and laying the groundwork for the immense good it would do. Knowing that my legacy, my husband's legacy, would genuinely help others, providing education to underprivileged youth, funding breakthroughs in medical research, and protecting our precious environment, rather than fueling the endless appetites of the entitled, brought me a profound sense of purpose and peace. It's a beautiful thing, you know, to realize that your life, even in its later years, can still be about creation, about contribution, about something far bigger than yourself, something that leaves a truly positive mark on the world. I feel Arthur's presence more strongly now, knowing his wealth will be used as he truly intended. The experience was painful, yes. The betrayal cut deep, and the wounds of their ingratitude may never fully heal. But it also forged in me a new strength, a clarity I hadn't known I possessed. And I realized the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money, but the opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet, to learn resilience. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for those who have taken you for granted is to let them fall, so they can learn to pick themselves up. It's a hard lesson, perhaps the hardest I've ever taught or learned, but it's one that truly sets you free. And I, Alara Sterling, a 78-year-old woman, am finally, truly free. That was my story. It's a heavy one, I know, but it's my truth. Our channel is full of life lessons like this one, stories of resilience, of difficult choices, and of finding strength in unexpected places. If you found something in my story that resonated with you, or if you simply appreciate hearing true experiences, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss our next video. It truly helps us bring more of these heartfelt stories to you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was it too harsh? Or was it a necessary step to reclaim my life and teach a valuable lesson? Share your thoughts with me in the comments below. I'll be reading all of them. Thank you for listening.